going off, I know it's time to make a change, and I can take the pain. You wanna sink or swim? I'm gonna go down swinging. Look deep within. I get lost in the feeling. I just need a win. I'm gonna find my meaning. I can make a change. I wanna play the game. You wanna sink or swim? I'm gonna go down swinging. Look deep within. I get lost in the feeling. Just need a win. I'm going off. I know it's time to make a change, and I can take the pain. You wanna sink or swim? I'm gonna go down swinging. Look deep within. I get lost in the feeling. Just need a win. I'm gonna find my meaning. I can make a change. I wanna play the game. Yeah.
I hope I don't go down swinging tonight. Pretty cool song to start the show with. Of course, I am Bigfoot Mr. Rob, BMR. Welcome to Beyond BMR. Joining me in Studio B, as always, is the lovely KRISTA from the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast. Please subscribe to the Blondes and the Booze, if not already. On this particular show, we just talk about everything. Tonight's guest is the crypto guru, or is it the cryptid guru? I kind of get that mixed up. Ron Murphy got that phrase or that moniker coined some time ago from our buddy Dave Scott. Awesome guest, about his third or fourth time on the show. Always a welcome to have Ron on the show. Of course, if this is your first time here, please subscribe to Bigfoot Michigan Rob on YouTube, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, and of course, Texas from Porsche, all found on YouTube. You can find us on iHeartRadio, Spreaker, and wherever podcasts are found. If you want to help support what we all do around here, the Super Chat is open. Great way to help support the show. And also, you can become a BMR pirate. Join today. And you know what you get? Well, you get a picture of me sporting a famous bandana next to your name in the chat room. I have a lot of fun with that, and people seem to enjoy that. So join today. Super chats are open. You can find us on all platforms, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, you name the platform, we are there. So thanks for everybody for coming on in. And, it's funny. I don't have to do the Alabama Bigfoot thing no more because that was done and over with. It was a success. Thanks to all that participated. However, I got to tell you guys, Bigfoot Mission Rob presents True Cryptid Encounters, Book 1, found on Amazon. My book is, the link is pinned in the chat. You can find it on my YouTube channel as well. For those of you that have bought it, thank you very much. Leave a review because just like YouTube, thank you, Gary Spike Sr., for gifting 5 Bigfoot Mission Rob pirate memberships. Arr! 5 new pirates. Thanks, Gary. Once again, though, the book on Amazon, leave a review because just like YouTube, it's all about analytics. And I go through Amazon, so the more reviews that are put forth, they get a Texas Front Porch for the super sticker. Thank you, Tex. So with that being said, yes, please do that because at the end of July, sometime maybe in August, Bigfoot Mr. Represents True Cryptid Encounters Book 2 will be available for purchase. Thank you in advance for that. Thanks to Tex. Thanks to Mr. Senior Spikes, that is, for the awesome contributions here early. Contributions not expected, but always welcome and always appreciated. So thank you ever so much for that. Everybody in chat, thank you and hello. I appreciate it. Come on in. Again, if you're new, subscribe to BMR, the Blondes, and Tex across the platform. I do have to say PRT, Josh Turner, special shout out. A lot of paratroopers have been coming on over. Josh has been, promotes BMR, the Blondes, and Tex, and I appreciate Josh's efforts. Now he's on live tonight, But you know what? That's okay. That's okay. We're all team around here. Thanks for joining us this evening. With that being said, I got to bring up the lovely KRISTA.
Hey.
Hey, KRISTA, what's happening?
Busy day. Had an awful day at work today, but I'm glad to be here. This is a bright part of my day right here.
Well, thank you. It's always a bright day whenever I can see your smiling face, despite having a bad and hectic day.
Right.
My day was okay. Again, I'm always doing yard work. I grilled some ribs today, which came out fabulous.
Yeah.
I'm thinking about dropping an Instagram video on how I prepare the ribs because I can do ribs tender, fall off the bone, chewy but succulent.
Maybe you should.
It only takes me about 68. It only takes me 68 minutes to be exact to do it on the grill.
Oh wow.
So yeah, and I'm not tooting my own horn. You put it on the smoker, it takes 5 hours. Right? But there's a distinct different taste, though, I must say. Oh, when I want to get done quick and Tuesday.
So are they tender though? Like fall off the bone tender?
Boy, I don't make them fall off the bone when I do them on the grill because you just can't get that. But what they are though is they're very moist, very tender. You got to bite into them. And now when I do them on the smoker, they fall off the bone.
Yeah. I took my kid the other day. So my latest obsession, there's a barbecue place here by my house. And so me and my kid the other day, we went there and I had ribs and they're so good there. Like I'm addicted to their ribs.
I'm weird with ribs because sometimes I like to fall off the bone and sometimes I just want to just pick it up and just, be a man about it and just eat it right down to the bone.
Yeah.
So, it just depends on my mood, I guess.
Well, Paranormal Paul has a question about the ribs. He says, BMR, do you take the membrane off the ribs?
On the baby backs that I get, because I do baby backs usually on the grill, there's no membrane on them, or unless it's maybe already removed by my butcher. See, because the butcher that I use was my supplier when I owned my bar, and he kind of knows how I do things. In fact, all the things I learned about cooking was from my butcher and my cook. So after 13 years in the bar industry, I kind of know how to do all of it. So, but yeah, I get mine no membrane already.
Text says always take off the membrane.
Yeah, mine come without it. Now I know with the St. Louis barbecue style ribs, yeah, you got to remove the membrane.
Yeah, I don't cook ribs, so I couldn't tell you.
But that's okay. Well, when I see you again, perhaps I'll show you. Perhaps I'll show you, KRISTA.
There you go. Sounds like a plan.
Yeah. So I know a guy that probably likes ribs. He's sitting backstage, and without further ado, I'm gonna bring up Mr. Murphy.
Hello, and actually, I do love ribs very much. But let me posit this question to you: okay. Are you folks into the beef ribs? Because that is my go-to.
Well, I will.
Pork usually around here.
Well, I will tell you this, Ron. Is the St. Louis rib the spare rib? Is that the beef rib, or can you get it either style?
Either or.
I do like. Okay, I will tell you this. I do like. I haven't had those in a while. I must admit. I like the beef short ribs on the bone, and they're a little square, and I throw a boatload on the grill and just do them. I love those, but I am a beef guy. I'm a steak man first. I'll take steak over ribs any day of the week. So, you know what I'm going to do, Ron? I think now that you mentioned that, my next trip to the market, I might get some beef style ribs, and that's typically what they call the spare rib, correct?
That's right. I'll tell you, if we're ever together for a conference in the future, we should have as part of that someone that sells ribs.
I'm game.
Well, I tell you, we've got something in the works. I'm not going to talk about it today. We got something big planned in 2025 of the fall. But when we do this, we're not going to. It's not going to. All holes will be barred. We're dropping the cuffs on this one.
Nice.
So I'm looking forward to. We just started working on this project like 2 weeks ago. So that might be. Maybe we'll put that on the menu, KRISTA. I don't know.
Maybe so. Maybe we can find to sponsor our ribs.
If we could be a sponsor, yeah, absolutely, Ronald Murphy. So, yeah.
Great idea.
A good play on words by myself, Ronald. In fact, you'll be one of the first people we invite to come down as a vendor or whatever you want to do, and speaker. Who knows? Again, it's 2025 in the fall, so we're in the infancy planning of that. So
I'll be there, whatever capacity you need me.
Well, that'd be fantastic. So we can write Ronald Murphy down as an attendee of some sort. Thank you, Ronald.
That's right. What date are you thinking about?
We can tell them.
What, October? Well, it's October, right?
He said state.
Oh no, Ozark Mountains, Missouri.
Oh,
Missouri. We're looking at possibly. Now it's not set in stone, but we're looking at possibly Branson.
wow, that's amazing. Yeah.
And
Amazing.
Tex says, "Well, I guess the cat's out of the bag." LOL.
Yeah, well, I have we got to market it. Well, we can gradually say our plans, right? Nothing's finite.
Yeah.
But we are doing something.
Yeah.
In Missouri, in October of 25. That's guaranteed.
And we were thinking that, like Missouri, just because it's central, throughout the United States, where it's more central. Located, more people can come. So yeah.
So absolutely. So yeah, we're all excited about that, and I'm excited. So, and the whole team's excited. Tex is excited. Brandy, KRISTA are excited. Jason
Monica,
McLean, Monica Rollins. We got a pretty nice team of people that are well versed in the event planning and such. So yeah, we're really looking forward to doing our very own gig, right? So we're really looking forward to that.
Awesome.
And so Ron, as I mentioned earlier, you've been on several times. I always appreciate having you on. I mean, I kind of told you backstage that that Tex, I know you have something to say before I start, applauding Ronald Murphy.
This is why I don't watch your show live, because I can't sit here and let you butcher things, and not in a good way. And
what did I butcher? The ribs?
Bombs, and just go. KRISTA, you got to get him on a shorter leash, girl.
What did he butcher?
What did I butcher? The ribs?
Oh my gosh, you don't know what St. Louis ribs are. You don't know what freaking beef spare ribs are.
No, I
you
don't
know when to pull the damn membrane off.
I don't.
Everybody about a damn conference.
I'm one of those guys. Hey, listen, Tex, I'm privileged. People do that stuff for me.
You like Steve Martin, or you like Ghost Hunters. It's things go to hell in a handbasket. Dogs and cats living together. I mean,
yeah,
what? I tried to be good, Ron. I am sorry. I tried to stay out of this, but I just couldn't let it go, man. I just could not let it go.
That's nothing less than expected from Tex.
I will say this. I haven't been excited about something like this in a long, long time. When we first started talking about it, I was dreading it. I was like, oh God, we're going to do this again. And because I'll say this, last year, the Alabama conference was my first time to ever do something like that, help, plan and all that kind of mess. And I was asked, well, what'd you get out of the conference? I said, I got out of it that I'm not going to do it again. And I'll be dadgum if I hadn't been home 2 weeks, and here we are. So
with even
I will say this. It is Paul says, Tex, excited about the conference of the ribs. It depends on cooking the ribs. I'm not so sure about Rob up there. But I will say this. It seems to right now, it's very, very, like he said, in the infancy of it, but it seems to be coming along. It may fall together, I hope. And I will tell y'all this. Brandy and KRISTA are oh my God, you better not let them, you better not rev them up and then let them go, because I'm going to tell you, if you do, you better be ready for a damn ride, because once they get started and get that in their head, they are gone, folks.
Hmm?
And there is no stopping them. There is no
Right.
stop. They jumped on this and off they went.
We
I'm
even have a
proud of you.
confirmed speaker already. We have,
Yeah.
we're on a roll.
I got to say, I'm proud of you, and I'm happy to be a part of this with you.
Thank you.
It's I'm really looking forward to it. I really am.
Well,
I think the
it's exciting.
only one not looking forward to this. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I think it's exciting because you are all good people. And the idea of being invited to a conference, sometimes, you don't really vet it. You don't know who is going to put it together. But I think that that's one of the attractions about this so much. And barbecue aside, you guys are just good people. And it's good whenever you have a forum to talk about the things that we all find, very endearing to us, to talk in such a forum, an open forum like that, with your friends. You can't beat it. It's the best thing in the world.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Thank you. That means a lot, and I totally agree. And don't think you're going to get up there and listen to all of us talk. That ain't going to
We're
happen.
not speaking.
Yeah, we're not even speaking. We are
We're not
just we're taking.
Now, I'm not saying if I hear a crowd, overwhelming crowd, room shattering chant,
Shanny BMR, BMR.
We want text, that I will not get up.
Oh,
on
I'm
stage.
sorry, we got text. I'm sorry. Yes, of course.
So yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm sorry, BMR. I'm sorry, but I had to jump on.
You're more than welcome.
Jerk your chain and rattle your cage a little bit.
I've been doing this while. It takes a lot to rattle my cage. What was I saying? Who's our guest? All right.
But I'm going to bow out. Ron, always good to see you, brother. You take care. KRISTA, love you, babe.
Yep.
All right.
Love you.
Rob,
See you later, Tex.
I love you too, Texas.
be good.
All right.
We'll see y'all later. Y'all have a good night. I'll be listening.
See ya.
That's one of the reasons why I love doing these live shows. We all share the same platform, so we can all hop on and bug
We all
each
have
other.
access to
And we
all
do
of our-
that. Yeah, we have access to all of our shows. So if we want to come on and give a little shit, well, we can. But it doesn't frazzle us, and it's fun, and I think the audience enjoys it too. So thanks, Tex, for chiming on in.
Yep.
Going back to what I was saying about Ron, I said this backstage a little while ago. You've been on like 4 times, and there's not too many people that I have as repeat people. No offense to anybody else. They're all great guests we've had on. What I love most about you, Ron, and why I enjoy talking to you, and I do follow you, not just because you're on my show. I've seen you on other shows, Space Out Radio, and a plethora of others. You always give information. Every time I get done with the show with Mr. Murphy, everybody, I learn something that I had not thought of or known. And when I do a show, it's just not purely for entertainment, but it's for putting out quantitative and quality information moving forward in research, if you're into research, getting the data, and of course, having an entertainment factor. I mean, it's not all business. It's fun and games with a spin on quality guests. And Ron's quality guest.
Thanks, Tex.
And Tex, once again, thank you for that. Love you, my man.
He said Ron rocks.
Ron does rock. So, Ron, with that, again, thank you, Tex. Thanks for everybody for coming on in. Subscribe if you're new. So, I just want to tell you that, Ron, before we get out of the show, because you're an awesome guy, quality guy.
It means a lot. Thank you.
I titled the show "Mysteries of the Fae, Cryptid Correlations." I want to start with that, but I've had you on. I looked at some of the shows. We never talked about Dogman either. I don't think to any extent. I like to cover that in the second half, but in the first half, because you really are you've written several books on the subject, books on all the crypto guru. So I'm sitting down. We did some other shows, and you know, we talk about everything. We've grown where we talk about everything on this planet that's paranormal. We're more of a paranormal show that covers everything. And the Fae happens to be part of the paranormal, right, Ron?
What's that?
The Fae
yeah,
happens,
absolutely.
the
Yeah,
Fae is a part of the paranormal, and I like to talk a little bit about that and how they relate to these cryptids, if there is a correlation.
Sure. And I think whenever we talk about the world of the Fae, it straddles the line between the preternatural, the paranormal, the metaphysical. It's like all in one kind of a thing, right? And whenever I look at stories of the Fae from Europe, and even the stories of the Fae from Native American tribes as well too, they also have wars of the little people and magical beings. We start seeing a correlation here to the point that it's just not on the surface. There's something intrinsically connecting these thought forms around the world to the point that it becomes an archetype. That if I describe a fairy to you, somebody in Africa, somebody in Oceania, they would all recognize what I'm talking about as well, because it really is embroidered into our DNA.
Yeah.
Oftentimes I've said that I've asked people about the folklore behind all these myths, as they might say. But I think all these stories did not just evolve out of someone's imagination, did they, Ron? I mean, these things have existed, and perhaps they've been fabricated over the years, but the elements that we're speaking of today are based in fact. And I hate to use the word fact, based in some form of truth.
Right. So whenever I write, I try to go back, into the archaeological record and even into the speculative record as well too, about what the genesis of these particular entities, how do they arrive? And I think that we essentially have to look at the time whenever we lived in a hunter-gatherer society, and the conduit between this world and that world was the shaman. This special person that was singled out in order to communicate with the other side. And I think it's at that point right there that the world around us becomes multi-layered, right? There's things out there in the world that's going on, things out there in the world that we can communicate with if we know how to do it. So it's just not black and white. It's like the layers of an onion, there's something out there that goes deeper and deeper. And I think whenever we look at fairies and elementals, and even the name elemental suggests that they were the personification of the elements around them, and that's perfectly fine. If you live in a chaotic world and you need water, or you fear thunder or earthquakes, the idea of personifying something makes sense, because you will be able to try to placate it, try to reason with it in whichever way possible. But I think there's something more to it, though, because not only is it a personification of the world around us, but it's also essentially nature, right? So nature is now a sentient form that is embodied by what we would call the elemental or the Fae.
Mm-hmm.
So when I think about elementals, what is it? Wind, earth, fire, water. Is that the four?
And spirits, the ether, people used to call it, yeah.
So to the average person, they might just think a river. They might just think the forest. They might think a fire, a blaze in the Pacific Northwest or in Canada. But there is a spirit behind all of these elements. Is that correct?
Right. So, especially whenever we look at the world of the alchemists, they believed that every element had a spirit that attended that element. And if you go back into the Middle Ages, not even into the Middle Ages, but if you go back into antiquity, it was believed in the world of burgeoning science that even the stars had, a messenger attached to it. Everything in the world had some sort of guiding intelligence to it. So the alchemist saw that all the elements obviously had some sort of attending spirit to it. And in order to understand how you transmute things and how you do all this kind of things that alchemists were searching for, it's best if you know how to deal with that particular spirit. So it's almost a form of conjuring, I guess, in a way. It's probably a form of spirit talk before, there were Ouija boards or anything like that. But it was a way for us to understand the world around us and possibly grasp what was going on. And if we could grasp it, maybe in some way we can control it as well.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about that, KRISTA? Because I know that you delve in a lot of this in your prior activities.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely makes sense to me. For sure.
Yeah, I think we look at people like C.S. Lewis, who wrote the Chronicles of Narnia. He claimed that whenever he was a young man, he stayed in a house that was both haunted by fairies and by ghosts. And he claimed that the fairies were far worse. So I think what's going on in the 21st century, in our imagination, we don't believe in such things as fairies anymore.
Right.
The majority of us have kind of pushed them aside. But if we don't push them aside and we think, is it possible that there are spirits out there that have always occupied this world and they're still with us to this very day, then things about like ghosts now are kind of a little bit more difficult to pin down. And the idea of, spook lights or earth lights that people talk about, the things of, UAPs, now we see that there's a gray area in all these paranormal activities, if you will, and maybe in a way they're all linked together as well.
Do you think they're negative?
I think that they could be negative. So I think when we talk about fairies, they always had a rather ambivalent nature. So even if you were dealing with something that would be considered of the blessed court, the Seelie court, a fairy that was known to interact with human beings, usually on a beneficial note, it was never tried and true that was always going to be the character of that particular entity. So whenever you hear, don't piss off the fairies, that's number one. But really, if you do not want to get yourself on the wrong side of the fairy world, it's best if you simply don't interact with them at all. As a matter of fact, if you have like a house brownie, for instance, this is something that would come in and sometimes do your work and laundry and such like that. You were not supposed to even, recognize it. You're not supposed to name it. You're not supposed to do anything at all except let him do his things, because it can become very malevolent if you attempt to domesticate it. See, that's the other thing. Fairies are wild, and we in the civilized world, we don't like to see wild things, right? So we even nickname, wild animals and things, because if we name them, then we can control them. And fairies, at their very nature, like nature itself, is completely uncontrollable and unpredictable.
Yeah. I did a private case, and I might have told you about this, and it was a 5-year long case because we couldn't figure out what was going on. It was a horse farm, huge horse farm, and horses were dropping over dead for no reason. And, and then she had hauntings, things going on inside her house, and it was a lot of it was around the animals. And we did thorough investigations, ghost-wise, and there was two of us, I did, and another guy actually seen what looked like a troll. It was it was in her barn. And so I had studied demonology under Jeremy Leonard. And so I called him. I'm like, I don't know what this is. It's not, ghost wise. It's not, we've done all the stuff for like possibly demonic, none of that. And he said, what about the elementals? You need to think about that. And do you know that once we realized, so that her property used to be an apple orchard. She cleared it and put in different paddocks for horses. And so we ended up getting some apple trees and planting, and we did a little ceremony. And I told her, I said, don't ever eat apples off of here. This is for them. You want to give to them. And let's see if this works. And that was 3 years ago, and everything's been great. Go figure.
Wow.
Tell me if
crazy.
that isn't weird.
Well, I know that I've dealt with a lot of cases up in the Bridgewater Triangle area up in Massachusetts, and a lot of people have those kind of similar types of activities happening. It's really, you can't really pin it down because it has so many unique sides to it. And there was a Native American shaman that suggested planting certain types of native plants around the house, and whenever that was done, a lot of times these activities go away.
Yeah. It was just the craziest thing, that this had went on for so long, and horses, like, she had them like tested over at University of Missouri, like what happened to these horses, and they couldn't come up with anything with these horses. It was just like there's no cause for them to die, So it was a pretty scary thing, and then it was just as simple as giving back to them.
Yes, right, but. Isn't it something too that whenever we give back to them, it's something out of the natural world itself, right?
Right.
And that makes sense because we have really eliminated nature. Even the natural world that we have around us is kind of still a bit of a garden. That's what we have allowed it to happen. But if you go into areas wherever you allow nature to just to grow, the way it's supposed to grow, any signs of humanity disappears very, very quickly. But we like to put our fingerprint on everything. But I think that one of the necessary morals of the story that comes out of this is, in order to set everything right, we have to return to that nature which we have forgotten.
Yeah. Yep, I get it. I understand.
A lot of times we hear about the fairies being nefarious or being evil or being on the side of, well, let's face it, the devil, right? And then we hear the stories about them, helping, especially with, I'm gonna tell a story. I'm gonna let, in a little bit, Ron, I'm gonna let you continue on about them also helping people in the forest if they're lost or perhaps they went through a portal and they were guided out. And in some instances, you create a portal to trap some of these people, right? AKA a lot of 911 or 411, 911, 411s. So can the fairies, the elementals, can they all be both good and bad?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I believe that wholeheartedly. I think that we're dealing with something that is, fickle. Let's put it that way. Just like nature, there's a bit of uneasiness there. We can predict the weather. It's going to be a great day outside, but sometimes a thunderstorm arises. And I think that that's the same way you have to look at the fairy world as well too. Even the nice, pleasant fairies can sometimes have a bit of thunder to them.
And it doesn't seem like it takes much to tick them off either.
No, absolutely not. I've heard stories about, simply leaving out food for them or leaving out clothing for them, especially from the Middle Ages. The idea that you want to kind of dress them up because, they're elemental creatures, a lot of times they're running around buck naked, and that's fine. But, to the Victorian sensibilities, people thought about clothing them. So I think that is another affront to the natural world. Whenever we kind of take nature and say it's wrong or it isn't right, then we are, imposing our own values onto these entities, and they don't like that very much.
Right. Makes total sense to me.
It does to me as well too, because we, for the vast majority of our humanity, have had to exist within the rhythm and flow of the natural world, right? We had to be part of this universal frequency, and if we weren't, we wouldn't be here as a species now. And then what had happened was, we started to become very intelligent, and then we put up walls, and then we separated us from them. And it is my opinion that whenever we started to put up walls, that is whenever things started to go bump in the night, right? Because the world that we were used to, the world in which we were familiar with, the world that we were afraid of, yet we still knew about, now we have stepped out of that frequency and that vibration. Now that world lies beyond the walls which we built up. And that is why we're afraid to this day, because we have decided as a human race that we were going to step out of that universal frequency.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you think oftentimes that people out in the forest just walk past or ignore these elementals or persons of the faith, spirits of the faith, and not
Yeah,
know?
I think that we have to be. I think so much of this is indoctrinated out of us. Kids will play for hours out in the woods, with chasing fairies or what have you. And I think when we look at Peter Pan, this is a little bit melodramatic, but kids could see these things because they have not been told that they don't exist, right? It's only later on in life that kind of magic that's imbued in the world around us slowly fades away. I love looking at sunrises and sunsets, and every time I see a deer, I still pull over to take a look at it because I still have this wide-eyed wonder about the world around us. But I think that it becomes so trivial or commonplace that you become complacent with the natural world, and you see it as a product, as a consumer that you can feed off of, and instead of giving you strength, you take from it instead of allowing it to be itself. I think that fairies will always be that natural wildness. The fairies will be the surf in the ocean that crashes against the beach. It will be the thunder and lightning, and it will be forest fires. It will be all of that stuff. But we as human beings want to kind of make them cute. We want to dress them up in all these kind of gowns. We want to put names on them, and we want to control them, and we want them to be cartoon characters. But that's not the way fairies work.
No, not at all.
Really briefly, KRISTA started a comment or a question, which I think you kind of touched on. Ron might have came in a little late. Are Fae of the Forest spirits the same?
Yeah, I think Crystal will answer this as well too. I do feel that is the same. I think that we have different names for them, but all in all, it goes back to the same thing. It is that undergirding spirituality within the natural world.
Yeah, but they're still different because, like I said, that whatever at that private case that we did, this literally went on for 5 years. We did every paranormal thing possible. I mean, I put everything from like iron. I'm big on iron, because it repels, and put like horseshoe nails and everywhere. I mean, it was just crazy the stuff that we did there, and nothing worked until we planted these trees.
Right, that's right.
And
yeah.
Crazy. It's crazy. And it had every symptom like an actual haunting,
Right.
like things were moving in the house and, just weird stuff going on. So,
right. And these are all good points. And if we look at, the name just escaped me here for a second. Hold on one second there. Oh, hold on, guys. Hold on. I'm having a bit of a problem here with my stop. Okay. Sorry about that, guys.
Sorry.
Okay, are we okay? Good. When we're looking at, it skipped me. My screen started to go a little bit haywire, so I threw my thought pattern. Sorry about that.
You're good.
You're fine.
I forgot what I was going to say.
Well, that does happen. Ron, that does happen. And we're certainly not going to hold it against you here today. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to bring up something before I forget, because I want to move on with your thoughts on the correlation with these elementals, the fae, the fairies, with like cryptids, right? But I have to ask your opinion on this, and I don't think I ever told you this story, and I'm not going to go on and on about this story, but I found it to be very different. Amongst all the stories that I've gotten, there was this man that had been camping in the same area for 20 years, okay? There's a river that runs through his campsite, same campsite. He knows the trails, the forest, the woodline, the meadows, the peaks, the valleys, the ridgeline like the back of his hand. 20 years. One night, he's in his tent and he felt a little strange. He gets up out of his tent and now he feels displaced. It's nighttime, Ron, so he was kind of freaked out a little bit. So he decided, you know what? I'm going back to sleep, wake up in the morning. He wakes up in the morning and everything is very familiar with him, much like it's been in the past. So he's thinking that whatever his experience, one was a dream or he was just vivid dream, I guess. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But he goes on the trail, but a familiar trail. Then all of a sudden, after about 10 minutes, no more than 10 or 15 minutes in, Ron, he's in a part of the woods which is now very unfamiliar with him. The river running along the right side of him is now gone. The familiar trees that he saw are now unfamiliar. He cannot determine the topography. He cannot determine where he's at. He starts to panic and freak out. He thinks he's lost. What happens? He's thinking. So at this point, he's almost like, I've got to sit down and gather my thoughts, because the more I walk, the further lost I'm getting. Sits down on a stump. He's looking now into the unfamiliar tree line, and now in the tree line, Ron, there are faces start to protrude through on the trunks, maybe of 3 feet up, and they're faces, not scary faces, but I would have to imagine it's still very scary. I don't care if a face is coming out of a tree, you're going to be scared no matter what it looks like, right? So he's looking at these faces, and then something in his mind told him to follow the faces. So he gets up and he starts following the tree line and these stumps, and every face that appeared on the stump he followed. He said, Rob, this went on for 10, 11 minutes, but then the faces stopped, and within a matter of minutes, he was now in the familiar place. The river was there. The terrain was familiar. Within another 7, 8 minutes, he's back at his campsite. He's asking me, Rob, what was this? So my question to you, Ron, is, and that's the Reader's Digest of that story. So I just surmised it, of course. So I didn't really know how to answer that. What I thought immediately was the elementals guiding him back to safety. So my question to you is, have you heard such a tale or story or an experience? And if so, or even if not, how do you process that? What's your thoughts?
Well, I've never been much of a hunter, but I live in Western Pennsylvania. My dad was a huge avid outdoorsman, so he would drag me into the woods whenever I was a teenager, and because that's what he wanted me to be. I enjoyed time with my dad, but I remember hunting in this one particular area that I knew very well. I mean, again, there was water around us, just like in your story. So I knew where the water was located, and I knew that if you would just simply follow around the rim of the water there, I would get back to where I needed to be. But after a while, it wasn't working that way. It was like where I was walking was no longer the trail that I knew. Although I should know it because it's the same lake and everything. So there should be nothing out of the ordinary. But everything was out of the ordinary whenever this was going on. I was disoriented. I was confused to the point where I was starting to get like a little frightened here because, this shouldn't happen. Now, this all came to an end whenever I decided to sit down on a stump to get my bearings. And I swear to you, and it still gives me chills to this day, something laughed at me. As God is my witness, it sounded like almost like a child giggling out in the middle of the woods, and it's as if something was playing a trick on me. It was that simple. And then after the giggling stopped, and after I sat there for a few moments, I was easily able to find my way back. So I'm not sure if this is the case of two worlds colliding with each other, or if the veil between this world and the other was thinnest at that particular area. I'm not sure what's going on, but I know that in the lore of the Fae, people that step into fairy rings, for instance, these circles of mushrooms could be taken into the other world for, 7 years and a day. Or, if you go into the wrong part of the woods, you're never seen from again, because what's going on is you're encroaching on their territory. So what your friend experienced is absolutely incredible. But the reason why I'm not like flabbergasted by it is because I have heard similar things happening, not only by people that I interview now, but also in the annals of history as well too. When people are out and about and strange things happen and they see things that shouldn't be there, and they interact with a forest that now takes on a almost human quality, a communicative quality, and that is something too deep to simply explain away as hallucination.
I have a question for you.
Mm-hmm.
So have you seen the videos? I've seen them all over, from TikTok to Facebook, of the ground breathing.
Yes, I have. Yes. So I don't know what to make of that. Okay. I try to do some research into that. People have talked about, natural gas deposits and all these kind of things. I'm not sure exactly what's going on there. So let me ask you, KRISTA, what is your take on that?
I don't know. Maybe it is some sort of first thing that came to me was like an elemental, or, maybe something like that, I don't know. That's the only thing.
It's almost like whenever you see videos of the trees walking too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. It's like when Rob comes back, he'll have to tell you about his little thing that he saw walking, which is weird.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I think, and I just did a program with Small Town Monsters about different UFO cases.
I saw that. I watched it the other day.
Oh, right. I appreciate that. Well, there's going to be one coming out about the Vegetable Man that's going to be coming out, and it was supposed to be some sort of extraterrestrial, but I thought, in this, it doesn't seem extraterrestrial. It was an entity that looked kind of like a living plant, kind of like a one of those stick bugs, but it had like a human face that communicated. And people are seeing these things. And isn't it something that we were talking about this on a UFO program, because a lot of people don't know what to make of it, right? So I think a lot of people see things, they immediately call it spirits or ghosts or extraterrestrials or cryptids, when in reality it might be what they're seeing is the Fae.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that, because there's just a lot of weird stuff out there, and I was that person, not trying to keep going back to that case I did, but that was the furthest thing from my mind,
Well, yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because I did want to mention that case again here quickly, because one of the hallmark signs that you were fairy haunted in England was that fairies would often knot a horse's hair, right, the mane. Did that come into play in anything of the cases you were working on?
I don't know that. I don't know. It was more, of the horses dying.
Right. But
honestly, she was losing a horse probably once every couple months, and it just wasn't right. Yeah,
that's
it was really bad.
Wow, that's incredible. But I know that the idea of fairies getting around livestock, making milk turn sour is a common thing as well too. But the idea that they would also braid a horse's mane, that's something that I always found kind of I wondered about that. Why would that bother the horse? But there are tales in the United States of Bigfoot doing the same thing. Right. So you start seeing this kind of gray area and how everything becomes interconnected.
Yeah. Well, here's my thing with horses. I've had horses my whole life. I still have horses. And horses are flight animals. Horses they're not one to let, like if you're riding, if there's a deer, you watch a horse. I mean, their ears go up, they're on alert. And it's hard for me to fathom that a horse would allow a Bigfoot or a Fae or anything to come up and mess with its mane, because I know horses. I don't know. I don't know.
Unless it was enchanted by it.
Right. That's true. Yep. Could very well be. So I don't know. I've always found that odd, because I've heard that too. And, You know, I know my horses would never let a Bigfoot come up and do anything to its mane.
Right, sure.
Yeah. So anyway, hey Rob, I mentioned to Ron about that stick figure thing that you saw.
Yeah. Okay.
Can you talk about that?
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Do we assume that the ground breathing was attributed to the elementals? I'm sorry to step out.
We
for a
don't
minute.
know. We don't know.
Just something that out of our realm, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Okay, right. Yeah, this is a very interesting one. The stick figure. I witnessed this several years ago, and there's this place called Dead Man's Bridge. Now it's got coined that in 1967, and I'm not getting into the history of Dead Man's Bridge, but there's been several ghost hauntings of the young couple that died there. I, in fact, had come across one of them, as has one of my friends and many other people in the neighborhood. And there's a creek that runs through here. But as a kid, and even I haven't been there in many years, but it's a place where we would hang out frequently. It was a beautiful area. It was a creek, a tree line on either side of the creek with an open meadow. And we would often, as young guys, go down there, have campfires, drink some beers, and swap stories and BS as guys do, right?
Mm-hmm.
So this is the middle of the day, and we're on the other side of the creek. I'm outside the tree line, and I'm in the meadow. Now, it was a pretty hot day. The grass, the meadow, the field was pretty dry. And I'm with a friend of mine, and I'm just gazing ahead into the meadow when all of a sudden this stick pops up out of the ground. At the time, Ron, I think nothing of it because everything's dry. And to me, what I had witnessed of this stick popping up, to me, it wasn't surprising. It was just wet, a dry stick or it pops up out of nowhere. So I'm looking at it. I'm kind of looking over it. And at the time, Ron, the stick is probably, I want to say maybe 16 inches straight up from the ground up, 16 inches, but maybe an inch in diameter all around. Again, not really paying attention, looking over it toward the end of the meadow. Then all of a sudden, into my view, I kind of gaze back at the stick. Now the stick kind of rises up. Now, as it rises, I notice that it gets maybe a half a foot taller, and I notice spindly legs, and all of a sudden, out of the side of this stick, spindly arms come out, and the stick takes on a life of its own, and it starts running, kind of mechanically. Like it reminded me of the Planters Peanut Man that used to be when Planters advertised it with Peanut Man. It was running robotically like this, and the spindly legs are doing the same motion, and now it's running, Ron, toward the creek. I'm with my buddy. I said, holy cow, we're not scared. I'm chasing after this. I'm chasing after this literal stick figure or person. I mean, it's a stick. It's not a person, but it reminded me of the Peanut Man. It's running, and I'm getting close to it, closer and closer. And sure enough, it had legs and arms and everything. And it gets down to the bed of the river or the creek. And then it kind of jumps into it. And as soon as it hits the water, it turns back into your average everyday stick or branch or limb floating down the river, and it floats off. And I'm down in the river or in the creek, and I'm looking until it's out of my view. I'm looking at my friend. I'm like, did we witness something? What is that, like a big stick bug that we're not aware of? He's like, I've never seen it in my life. So I just, I try to look it up, find it, nothing like that. But I've heard stories, though, Ron, about stick figures or stick creatures or stick elementals. So what do you think I witnessed? What was that, in your opinion? You ever heard of anything?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because Chris and I were just talking about this whenever we took a little hiatus there. I did a special recently with Small Town Monsters about various UFO cases, and we were talking about the Vegetable Man of West Virginia. And I heard your story before. You had talked to me about that before, and I actually talked about your case on that particular episode. So you have to watch that because there was a young boy that reported almost the same thing. Although this stick figure came up and kind of touched him and seemingly fed from him. You know, there was like an interaction there, but almost the same way you described it. It was very tall, almost like a stick bug, right? And it had appendages. But yeah, very, very unnerving to say the least. And this occurs a lot. But as Chris and I were talking, a lot of people think this is so, amazing. It has to be something from another world. So a lot of times stuff is grouped into close encounters, extraterrestrial encounters, when indeed it may be closer to home than we think. Whenever people talk about, and of course, I can't say specifically, even if I was there, I wouldn't be able to answer what was going on. But all I'm saying is this. If we're talking about something that happened in the woods, and again, we're very close to rivers and bodies of water and all that kind of stuff, if it happened in the woods within the natural environment, then you would almost have to go with elemental first before you would rule that out. And that's at least my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Again, I thought I told you that. So yeah, send me the link later on. I would definitely want to go check that out. I thought I told you, but I wasn't sure because I've told that, well, half a dozen times at least in the last year. But
oh no, I thought it was a fascinating story. The episode is not aired yet, so whenever it does, I'll definitely tag you. But no, I think that's one of those things where again, the reason why I like doing this show and shows like this is because we have an open forum. So look, you're a lucid human being. You're an intelligent person. You're obviously sober. So it's not like we are talking to people that don't have a grip on reality, right? So whenever more and more people talk about this kind of stuff, the more we see a pattern. And without shows like this or without conferences like the one that you're planning, these stories will never get out there. And I think it's essential for them to get out there.
I think it's essential, and KRISTA knows this. I do talk about this ad nauseum, and I make a point to talk about this all the time. People say, Rob, why are you doing a story about dog man? Well, we'll talk about that later. Bigfoot crossing the road. It's kind of boring. And I'm like, boring? Well, no. First of all, somebody's reporting a cryptid or a Bigfoot, something that's not supposed to exist for one. 9 foot tall, 8 foot tall, a massive 800, 1,200 pound being crossing the road. What do you find boring about that? I ask these people. I certainly do not find it boring. Well, Rob, we've heard it for 1,000 times on other shows, other podcasts. But here's my thing, Ron. Perhaps you have. We all have. You mentioned data collection. I'm not a staunch researcher. I have a talk show. Do I look and investigate and research? Yeah, of course I do. However, the data needs to be collected, and this information needs to be disseminated for people that do this, frankly, for a living. Scientists. We know many people that have been in the research world for 30, 40 years, not even seen a Bigfoot once. And there are people that are out there way more than I've been alive, right? Yeah. So to me, it's not boring because the data to me is extremely important, especially when you're trying to convey what we're all into.
I agree totally. And the other thing that I point out too, that if we're ever going to be accepted, even at face value by the scientific community, we have to compile scientific data, right? We have to have some sort of methodology, or they're just going to throw everything out and say that we are, they're always going to keep us marginalized, and that's not fair because there's a lot of very good researchers out there. But I think the more we talk about these things, the more data we compile, the more closer We might never see the picture crystal clear, but at least the picture is coming more and more into focus.
Right. Right.
Absolutely. And this point of the show, I could give out a couple quick shout outs. Gary Spike Sr., thank you for gifting 5 Bigfoot Michigan Rob Pirate memberships. Become a pirate today. Thank you, Gary, for the 5 gift memberships. Texas from Porch and Texas from Porch again for the awesome super chats and stickers. Certainly contributions are not expected, but always appreciated to help us do what we do. You know, we are funding a conference come October 25th. Well, actually in 2025, I can't give out the date. 2025 fall. So thank you for that. If you're new here, subscribe to Bigfoot Mission Rob on YouTube, Texas Front Porch on YouTube, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, and our good buddy Josh Turner, who's on like 4 days a week, who sends a lot of people my way. Thanks to Josh. Great shout outs. Thanks for everybody for coming on in. So with that being said, I got to move on and ask you something. A lot of things that we do on all of our shows collectively, we all believe, and I didn't believe this probably a year and a half, 2 years ago until I got more involved with this. When we talk cryptids, the paranormal, UFOs, aliens, and now actually elementals in the fae, amongst other categories. Do you think there is a connection between all these things? But for today specifically, do you think that Bigfoot is part of the fae, or do you think that Bigfoot and the fae react and interact with each other about their efforts out in the woods?
So the more I get involved and research the paranormal, the closer I am to believing that everything that goes on out there is related to the fairy world in some way. And let me explain this a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're dealing with people. It usually seems that people have encounters, even with alien encounters, whenever they go outside of their comfort zone and into the other world, right? And that's whenever strange things happen. If you look at Whitley Strieber's Communion, whenever he was abducted, he talked about how natural the place smelled. These entities put their hands over his face, and he said that they smelled of cinnamon, and he said that the spacecraft smelled of Earth. So it seems that we have very, very natural elements to this. Even Bigfoot sightings, it always takes place out in the, if not a liminal zone, it takes place in the forest itself. So is it possible that whenever people see Thunderbirds or Dogman or Bigfoot or any of these other types of creatures, instead of thinking there are all these different creatures out there prowling about, is it possible that there is a natural energy that exists within our world that is capable of making us believe that we're seeing something that's not there, or taking the shape of something that it wants to? In fairy lore, again, the idea of glamour was very popular. That the entity could disguise its looks in order to convey a certain type of message or feeling to somebody. So we talk about infrasound now, when we talk about pheromones, and maybe we're closer to the truth on how these beings and these entities are able to do such things on a scientific level. Maybe they are able to, through sound, manipulate the way our thought patterns work. It's something to think about.
Most definitely.
The more and more I've been doing this and doing shows, talking to people like yourself and others, it just seems to me that it's all related some way, shape, or fashion. It really has to be.
Well, I'll tell you what, if you do have the conference, and if I am lucky enough to make the cut, how about if I give a lecture on fairies? I would love to do that.
Well, I got to tell you right now, I don't know what KRISTA is going to say. I know what she's going to say. We are going to ask you to be there and speak. How's that sound?
I appreciate it. You know what? And we'll talk fairies. That's what we'll do. And the best thing about this is if you have with the audience, then they'll start giving their stories as well too, and then we'll learn something very important, because nobody ever talks about this kind of stuff. Because I think we're still very Victorian in our mores, right? We still want to think that fairies are Tinkerbell. But if we get to the dark side of them, that makes people uneasy. But let's see what we can come out there. KRISTA had great stories about places being haunted, by these entities. And I'm sure that if we get there, we'll have a lot of people coming out and sharing these stories.
Yeah.
Well, I know Chris and I are really thrilled right now because this conference is just not going to be a cryptid conference. It's going to be cryptid, paranormal, UFO/alien, and now we will be introducing Theories of the Fae with Ronald Murphy.
I love it. I love it, my brother.
I know I'm getting ahead of myself. Texas shaking his head right now, but you know what? That's just the way I roll.
There you go.
We're aggressive, and I appreciate it, Rob Murphy. Yeah. You're definitely on. You're definitely on the short list. In fact, pencil yourself in. We're gonna have it. As long as you're not $10,000, I mean,
no, no. I work cheap.
Oh, okay, very good. Thank you so much for that. Well, KRISTA, there we go.
Yeah, that's awesome. Awesome.
So thank you so much for that. Yeah. And, again, once again, thank you for the show. I tell you what, though. I looked over some of our shows we've all done together, and a very hot topic, and always a popular topic, Ron, is that of Dogman / the werewolf, right? And we've never discussed that. And I know you've got a lot of information, background, you study on it. I don't know what your experiences are, if any. But what's your thoughts initially on Dogman? Is that something that's paranormal? And then I have a separate follow-up question, but let's just talk about the Dogman. The late Butch Witkowski, on Space Out Radio, he had two theories. The Dogman being the upright canid. In fact, he called it the upright canid, which was essentially a German Shepherd that could walk on two hocked legs with an oversized head of a dog. And then he also had the theory that there was one that was more like a human being, or like the Bigfoot with the big robust body, the human-like legs with the big wolf's head. And then he also speculated on our governments creating these things in labs. That's a lot that I put on the plate just to give you get your mind rolling here. What's Ron Murphy's thoughts on all this?
Well, I will tell you, I was on an expedition with Eric Altman and the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society back in 1999, okay? Never heard the name Dogman or anything like that. But we were out there with this man who was already pretty elderly, but he had a little sparkle in his eye. And his claim was back in 1984, he witnessed what he believed to be a Bigfoot. And he spent the rest of his life trying to validate that sighting. He tried to collect, DNA evidence and hair samples, and he would put apples out in the forest and wrap barbed wire around it, hoping to get either a scratch or getting some hair, or whatever. So he did this for the rest of his life. But he took us on an expedition up into the Chestnut Ridge, which I still investigate to this day. And he was talking about, the various types of creatures that he had seen out in the woods. He talked about seeing bear numerous times, and even mountain lions. And mountain lions are supposedly extinct in Pennsylvania, but he claimed to see a mother and cubs at one time, which, is a possibility. But he also then would go in to talk about seeing these monsters in the woods as well, too. And he talked about two different types of Bigfoot. The one type of Bigfoot was almost a guardian of the woods. If you would think Harry and the Hendersons, essentially that's what he was calling to mind. It was a big lumbering giant, squared off teeth, would eat a lot of berries and things like that. But then he stopped for a second and he thought, and he looked at me straight in the eye and said, but there's another type of Bigfoot out here as well, too. They have a more pronounced muzzle. They call it a muzzle. They're very gracile, so they're a lot thinner. And he said that they don't eat berries and such. They hunt in packs, which I'd never heard before. And this is before Dogman was part of the popular vernacular, right? So what he was describing, I could only describe, or what he was describing, I could only classify as a werewolf because I had no other kind of words to give it name. But it's interesting that even before the word Dogman became popular, people were still witnessing these things, right? And if we look, up in the areas where the Dogman legend originated from, where the name came from, people were reporting things out in the woods that looked like an upright cannon since, the time that the big woods were being deforested back in the 1800s. So we have to say that here in America, at least for the past, 200 years, people have been seeing something that looks remarkably like an upright walking cane. That's just a given. But then if we look at the worldview, and we look at Anubis, in the Egyptian culture, and we talk about, the idea, when we talked about an hour ago about shamanism and the idea of shape-shifting and taking on an animal form, this is really part of who we are as people as well, too. And the reason why we just don't completely scoff at it is because essentially somewhere in our bestial parts of us it makes sense somehow. Do you know what I mean? It makes sense that a human being can somehow take on an animal form simply because, that is our nature as well, too. Friedrich Nietzsche said, the longer you stare into the abyss, the more the abyss will stare back at you. And I think there's a psychology to this. I think that there's an idea that if we allow ourselves to become something other than human, that can be all-encompassing, and that can transform us. One of the cases that I bring up is Peter Stumpf back in the mid-1500s in Bedburg, Germany. He was basically a serial killer, but he believed that he received this enchanted belt from the devil himself in the woods, and if he put it on, he would transform into an animal. And he would prey upon children, he would prey upon farm animals, and he would also prey upon pregnant women, so he would be able to devour the fetus. I mean, this is the kind of person that we're talking about. So he would go out there and he would kill a child, and the next day he would go to the family and say, is there any way I could be of any help? He was one of these really, really strange characters, and he was eventually caught, and he admitted to all of his heinous crimes. But I think one of the reasons why we have to call them werewolves or call them, monsters, is because we as human beings don't like to admit that human beings are capable of such heinous crimes, when indeed we are. And I think there's something to be said, and I don't want to go too far afield here, but I think there's something to be said from a psychological point of view, that if we allow our passions to override our reasons and we become more animal than man, then I think that we do start taking on the form of the animal. Maybe not in the type of transforming into it, but we definitely take on the mannerisms of something that's non-human.
Right. No, I get it. You always give me food for thought.
Well, no, it's great food for thought. So you're talking about, and we talk about this too. A lot of things you say around, we actually talk about. I think a lot of people manifest these things.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And we're creatures of projection. Sometimes we project these things onto ourselves, but for the most part, we project them onto other people. For instance, Peter Stumpf, we projected onto him that he was, beguiled by the devil, and he became a monster, he became a wolf, because we don't want to think that a normal human being would do such things. But then we look at things that Ted Bundy has done, and Jeffrey Dahmer and all these things, and we know that people are capable of being nuts. They're capable of going off the deep end and preying upon other human beings in a myriad of ways for their various gratifications. So we know that people are capable of doing these things, but in a different setting, especially whenever religion was at the forefront. I think there was nothing else left than to think that these people were indeed shape-shifting into an animal.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
A lot of people talk about the shape shifting of a person into an animal.
Mm-hmm.
Add a net. Well, how's the word? I just anatomy. Okay, if you talk about the human anatomy, to me it just seems just impossible.
Impossible. Yeah.
Yep. Oh, I agree with you 100%. So let's look at it this way. Instead of, and I think Kristen will agree with this as well too, instead of thinking that a person is physically shape-shifting, let's put this down to a case of possession, okay? Possession, and that person then takes on that kind of stuff. I think that that's the way it should be. I think that's the way it should be talked about more than the actual form being transformed.
Mm-hmm. I could see that because, when someone is possessed, I mean, they do take on a different form.
They do. They do.
And they do move in weird ways. It's true.
That's right. Different likenesses and everything else like that. Right. They become something that is so beyond our reason and rationale that they do seem almost animalistic, or now in a world of in a religious world, they become demonic.
Yep.
KRISTA knows this about me. I mean, I believe in God, therefore I believe in the devil. Okay, because you can't believe in one without the other. And I pray. I believe in God. I don't believe in I don't worship the devil. I worship God. Now, I do now believe in, as KRISTA can attest to. The scariest things that I can't even watch are movies about possession where somebody is demonically taken over by a spirit or an entity. And as many people know, I have terrible nightmares, which I have not had, by the way. Thanks for everybody that commentated on my show I did a couple of weeks ago. But I could not get through that movie with Linda Blair or The Exorcist. I can barely remember the name. I finally watched it during the day a couple of years ago at noon when the sun was high and all my windows were open. I finally watched it. So I'm scared of that, but I also will listen to podcasts about exorcism. My favorite one is Dr. Malachi, Father Malachi, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's been on our bell half a dozen times or longer. Yeah. He does the series, which is fantastic. So, running in the woods, keeping it steered on cryptids or monsters in the woods, if you will. A lot of people a lot of things that perhaps we say, Ron, do you think that perhaps it's human beings possessed by a demonic force that are actually running amok in the woods that perhaps people are misidentifying as cryptids when in fact they're humans taken over by a nefarious entity?
Absolutely. And the reason why I think this is because people are opening doors that they should not be opening, right? People are dipping their toes in waters that are better left unstirred. So I think now more than ever, the idea of communicating with spirit worlds, using Ouija boards, using things that the untrained person should not, the uninitiated person should not be playing with. I think it opens you up. So I'm a good Catholic boy, right? I went, 8 years of Catholic school.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we were always told. That's right. We were always told not to watch movies about demonic possession because that would open you up to it, right? The mere fact of watching it now predisposes you to the condition that you are opened up to such things. So I think that there's a lot of people out there that find vampirism and find lycanthropy very romantic and very attractive, empowering, if you will. I think what's going on here is that people are inviting things in because they feel as if it's going to make them something greater than they are. There was one gentleman, what really got me involved in the idea of lycanthropy, this one gentleman would come to this little new age store in my hometown, and he had met a girl on the internet. And he would come to the store, occasionally would talk, but more often than not, he wouldn't say anything. But then he started to kind of open up, and he started to talk about werewolves. And then one day he suggested that he was a werewolf. And not only was he a werewolf, but he was going to be transforming pretty soon. And the girl that he met, his girlfriend, had a small child, and he was afraid that he was going to prey upon that child. Now, of course, this should show some sort of predilection to wanting to, harm children in some way, some sort of psychosis whenever it comes to dealing with children. But he seemed to be really upset with the fact that he could do such things. So a couple days before he said he was going to transform, he decided that he was going to get out of town. So he went out into the middle of nowhere, and as he claimed, looking back on everything, that he transformed into an animal out there, and he was far enough away from people that he couldn't prey upon anybody. But while he was out there, he ran into a female werewolf, and they ran together as a pack for the duration of their metamorphosis. So I think that what we see here is somebody that obviously has some sort of impairment of some kind, and possibly meeting somebody that fed into this as well too. But I think a lot of people are out there that are allowing themselves to be opened up to the idea of shape-shifting and becoming, animalistic, and that is really what's going on here. That's my opinion.
Mm-hmm. So,
I think that's
I have a friend who was out in the woods in Kentucky, and not the LBL, but it was somewhere in the general vicinity.
KRISTA, really quick, I gotta help my mom do something real quick.
Go ahead. But he talked about that he saw something that went past him, and it was early in the morning. He was out there deer hunting, just went past him, but he didn't feel like it was like on a ghost side of things. But yet, like he said, it was like a tall, lanky. He said almost looked like a gray.
Wow. Yeah. See, so I've had people, Dave Scott, as a matter of fact, he's told me about people up in Canada doing ghost hunts and taking pictures and coming up with grays in the pictures, in the photographs, yeah. Right? So again, and people have talked about this kind of stuff as well too. We talk about sleep paralysis and how often that occurs during sleep paralysis. Mm-hmm. And if we would go back a few hundred years, those were seen as demons, but now in our world, they're seen as extraterrestrials because we live in such a technologically advanced society that now we don't see demons anymore because those kind of are cliche things and things of superstition. But now we see aliens. But it could still be the exact same thing, exactly the same, demonic forces that are at work.
Yeah, he said he got real scared and felt, like just the feeling, of being scared and, overcame him. And he left. He didn't deer hunt, obviously.
Right.
Yeah, I just...
Yeah, and that's a good point too. I think that any time we as human beings are confronted by the paranormal or the otherworldly, we are afraid. But if you look at the Bible, whenever an angel comes to you, immediately they tell you not to be afraid. But mm-hmm. These creatures thrive on fear.
Right. Feeds them.
It feeds them. Exactly right. So I think that whenever we talk about these things, as Rob had suggested, if there's good, there is usually evil as well too. And so in this kind of structuralistic type of environment, there's good and there's bad. And whenever you're confronted with them, it's hard to discern what's going on. But the good are always telling you not to be afraid, while the evil things are loving the idea that you're terrified.
Yeah. I have a question for you, and this is on the ghost side of things. We're talking about our minds and what we believe, and heaven and hell. You believe in one and the other. So the Exorcist house is here in St. Louis, where they performed the exorcism of the boy, John Doe, whatever. And right. The man that owns that house now, he claims there is absolutely no paranormal activity. However, he doesn't believe in heaven or hell. He doesn't believe in any of that. And he says there is absolutely nothing that goes on there. He opened his house up to was one of the TV shows that did an episode there. And my ex team was part of it that helped host it. And one of my teammates was in there, and he got scratched. I mean, it shows him getting scratched in the house, So I guess my question is, with this person, my teammate being a believer, he had something happen. This man that owns the house, who's not a believer in either way, he claims nothing happens. I mean, it's
right. So this is, I think that this is a slippery slope here, because is heaven a place that has to be believed to be seen? That's number one. Okay.
Right.
And some, some theological philosophies, that is the case, right? In order for us to have it manifested, we have to believe in it. So because it's attaining our reward, if you will, right? Now, it's the same thing as like, but I don't know, whenever it comes to evil, if you can simply go through life with your ears plugged and your eyes covered, because evil is prevalent, right? It's all around us, and it's constantly gnawing at us. The same way good, goodness is out there as well too. We just find evil so much more picturesque and worthy of recording than good, right? We always had to, like if you would read Dante's Divine Comedy, we always want to talk about hell, but we never want to talk about heaven, because that's kind of boring, right? The meat and potatoes is the scary stuff right there. So maybe he should count himself lucky, because I do firmly believe, whether you're a believer or a denier or a skeptic or an atheist, you don't have to believe in them. What's important is that they believe in you. And then what are you going to do about that?
Right. Yeah, because I've often wondered, maybe things do happen. He's just closed-minded to it, or maybe they're messing with his mind.
That's right. Extreme. He might be having full-blown conversations at 2:00 in the morning with these things that he can't even remember. That's very possible. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Very true. Everything okay with your mom?
Yeah. Quick funny story for those that don't know. I moved my mom into my house like 5 years ago. Well, actually, 8 years ago, when my dad passed away. My family decided it wasn't right for my mom to live alone. Now my mom is fully functional. She's going to be 79 in January, but she's functional. She's very still smart and witty, but it was funny. And she knows I do a show, and I live I don't live, I have the whole house, but where I do the shows on a lower level. And she hates to interrupt me when I'm doing a show. But I thought it odd, because she normally doesn't go down the stairs because they're quite steep to get here, and she's coming down the stairs. And she goes, "Robbie," I'm like, "Ma, okay." She's looking for the step stool. I go, "Why do you need the step stool?" "I want to move your truck because I want to take my vehicle," which is the same car you got, KRISTA. "I want to take it to the store." I go, "Mom, truck out. You want me to move the truck? You want to move my truck, which is like, off the ground quite a bit, 4x4 pickup." I said, "Ma, if it's that important, I know you don't go to bed till 2 in the morning anyway. When I'm done later, I'll take you." "Oh, okay. Well, I was bored." "So you should be watching the show. It's a great show." She laughed. "Okay, I'll go tune in." That's my mind. I love
You should have brought her on.
Yeah.
I should have brought her. Yeah, what else she's backing up? She's I gotta bring her on one night for everybody to see.
Yeah.
Very, very cute. Very supportive.
Yeah.
I gotta tell you something, Ron. Listening to, because I had this on, I kind of was listening in the background. I'm not getting into this, but I gotta ask you this now, Ron, because we're talking a little bit about the occult or demons and everything else, the God. And everyone knows about the nightmares I've been having, and I got a lot of great help from a lot of my friends. KRISTA won, Nellie, who's in the chat, a lot from her. And this is a 1-hour story, which I'm going to tell the story probably on a Saturday night show. We're going to break this down, okay? And there's so much involved with this that I can't, KRISTA, I can't get into it tonight. but I'm going to ask you this, Ron, and that's why I mentioned why I'm very scared of when it comes to the devil, exorcisms, and demons in general, because I am a firm believer. And I get all these crazy nightmares. Now, I haven't had in a while, thanks to KRISTA, gave me some ideas, and Nellie Turner gave me ideas who's in the chat room that have helped. My dreams right now, knock on wood, are pleasant. But here's the thing. Again, there's a lot involved with this, Ron. I'm just going to give you one part of this, and only one, because it involved what I was in Las Vegas. I was playing cards with the devil, which I surmised. And again, it's a 1 hour story, which I'm not going to get into it today. I'm just giving you this one part of it. I did it 2 Sundays ago. It's on my channel for those who want to go watch it. I had woke up after the end of this dream, after the devil, my dad was in this. He turned into the devil and tried to pull me, as he said to me in the dream, the lake of fire. I could not get out of this dream. In fact, I dreamt on a Saturday and a Sunday the same dream, but different. It was the same yet different. It was like part 1, part 2. And now I'm pulled into supposedly the lake of fire. Before I hit the lake of fire, Ron, I woke up in a sweat. And you know what, Ron? The bottom of my feet were red, and I had 2 blisters on each foot. And my feet are smooth. They're cool. I take care of my feet, stuff like that. Okay, not to get all into the hygienics. They were red, they were hot, and 2 blisters after this nightmare, in which I thought I was getting pulled by my dad. And then later, my mother, again, 2 people, 1 person passed on, 1 person alive. In fact, it was my mother the second time. Not my dad, the second time, my mom. I woke up, dude. I said, man, was this a real, did I go into another plane, another reality? Was this a dream? It was so vivid. I was there. I was at the Flamingo Hotel in Las Vegas. My brother and sister were there. They happened to catch the show, and they called me. They were very worried about me. And they went to the location where I play cards at, and somebody told my brother and sister that they saw me there. A guy that looked similar to my brother, because they asked, was your brother or a relative here? So, Ron, that's a lot. Again, it's a 1 hour story. I just gave you enough for you to disseminate and give me your thoughts on it, because I ask everybody their thoughts. You have to watch the show. It's called Nightmares. It's on my channel. And watch it and give me feedback. But what's your thoughts on that, man?
Well, a couple of things. Now we do know from a psychological perspective that people have been able to manifest physical wounds on their body. Like the stigmata is one thing. People who have been held hostage before often will have nightmares, and ligature marks will appear around the wrist. Things like that do happen. But it seems almost as if you were experiencing a case of bilocation, that you were in 2 places at the same time. Mm-hmm. Now, bilocation, especially in the Eastern Orthodox Church, is the realm of saints, right? It's the idea that your physical form can be in 2 places at once. So again, that's not beyond the realm of at least possibility within these particular thoughts and these particular philosophies. So hell, see, that's a hard one, because what we could say is this: that you manifested these outward manifestations of an inward spiritual state from, what you were dreaming. But the idea that somebody saw you, that's the conundrum.
I will say really quickly, not that they saw me, because I was, again, just to say this again, I did a live show. My brother and sister happened to watch, and they were in Las Vegas. The dream, I was in Las Vegas, the Flamingo Hotel I was, and they were not far from there. And they were worried, and they knew I was not at the Flamingo. They knew I was at home during my show, but they were a couple blocks from the Flamingo. They went to the Flamingo. and they started taking pictures. And a bartender, walked up to my brother because we kind of looked similar yet different, like all siblings. And that says, "You have a brother. I think we saw him playing cards here not too long ago." And my dream was playing cards, which ended up being a devil or a demonic force, which manifested. It took the shape of my father at one point, my mother at another point, and tried to drag me into, as he told me in the dream, the lake of fire.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, one funny thing about this story, they started snapping. Karen, my sister-in-law, started snapping pictures all at the Flamingo, just looking for evidence or trying to help me or help themselves. And they sent me, they were in Vegas for 3 weeks. Every picture they've sent me from there went through without a hitch. Do you know she fired off 10 or 15 shots and they sent them to me inside the Flamingo where the dream happened? Do you know that every single picture was just a circle? They're not on their phone, and I never got them.
Wow. Wow, man, that is spooky. That is spooky stuff.
So when I talk about the devil, I really mean I'm scared of the devil.
I see that. Yeah. Wow, that's a show in and of itself. We should probably have a discussion sometime.
Well, yeah,
Yeah.
You need to come on a late night show with us, Ron.
Yeah, you know, because I gotta tell you, I did that show on a Sunday 2 weeks ago because I got up and I was scared, and I did this show and I had to speak on it because I found out a long time ago. I got to verbalize things that happened, and all my friends were working. KRISTA was working or sleeping. I mean, my brother and sister in Vegas. I'm certainly not telling my mom because I don't want to freak her out. So I did the show and I told my dream. I got a great response from everybody. And so everybody that did comment, I already mentioned Nelly and a few others. Thank you ever so much because it does help. So we're gonna do a show on a Saturday because I do Saturday shows at midnight now, and I think I'm not gonna do it I'm not gonna tell the story for an hour. I'm gonna get all the highlights, and I want to break it down with everybody. Yeah, well, Ron, you'd probably be sleeping again, but we're gonna break that down. But yeah, I need more answers. Now, KRISTA gave me some suggestions that have worked. Okay, so I'm cool. Pleasant dreams from what taking her suggestions. I had a lady come over, a spiritual leader, blah blah blah, anointed the house, blessed the house, burnt the sage, said prayers. So when my mom wasn't here because they want to spook her. So as of now, knock on wood, nothing. But it's still something that haunts me that I need to still figure out. So I think we'll do a show on a Saturday. But yeah, Ron, that's something.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. So as far as summer goes, most of all my appearances are going to be on Saturdays. But let's try, if you don't mind, let's try to make something happen maybe in September sometime, if that's not too far out. And we should do a program called The Demon Haunted World. That's a word that's a term that Carl Sagan actually used. And let's talk about that for a while. Let's talk about superstition. Let's talk about the way religion influences people and the way maybe people influence religion as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great idea. And certainly September's not too far out because I'm not spitfire ready to roll with talking about this all over again. Since it's gone, it's no longer a part of my life today, but it is certainly a part of my past within 2.5 weeks ago.
Right. Well, I think it's something, especially what we talked about tonight, when we talked about the idea of exorcisms and the idea of possession being mistaken for things. I think that we could certainly have this as a viable talking point about so many different things. You know, there is people out there too that believe that Sasquatch is a demon as well. And it was put fear into us as well. The Mormon religion believes that Bigfoot represents the fallen ancestors of Cain, or maybe even Cain himself. So there's a lot of different things that we can talk about.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yep, for sure.
So I think I'm going to switch topics on that altogether. One final thing before we all get close to the end. We talked about the dogman phenomenon, and I mentioned something that I believe happens today. I think KRISTA thinks it's in existence, and I've done shows on it and talked to several people When we go back to the dog man, do you think that the ABC agencies, I'm sick and tired of saying government, the government. So I just refer to the ABC, which everyone knows what that is universally. Dog man. All these, do you think that, first of all, okay, we don't have to use the term dog man or super soldier. You think that we're creating things in laboratories in these deep underground military bases, for those that don't know? Do you think we're creating these things and releasing them into our national forest? And if so, do you think they make up a percentage of the missing 411?
I think that there is indeed something out there accounting for the reason why people go missing. And it's my opinion that there's at least a percentage of people that are going missing, and that is due to something uncatalogued out there in our woods doing whatever might need to happen. I do not believe in any way that there are manufactured soldiers out there. I don't mean to burst anybody's balloons or anything like that.
Well, you're not busting mine. That's just a term everyone bandies about. But do we create things, though, that are released?
Oh, yeah. I think that, ever since, Godzilla represents what happens with unbridled nuclear activity. These are all boogeymen that come back and haunt us. And these aren't things in which come from the world naturally. It's like 1950s sci-fi. They are brought about because of our ridiculous impact on the world around us, right? We create the monsters. So I think in many ways, the dog man and the talking about, the super soldiers and everything is definitely a reflection on what we are capable of doing or what we would like to do. But I don't think that that's actually occurring. But again, I don't want to completely say that. I do think, in all honesty, and I don't know exactly what that is, but there is definitely something out there in the woods that if a person encounters it, the likelihood of you not being heard from again is quite high.
Mm-hmm.
What's your take on these people that get lost in the forest that you always hear the stories about? It's either the person in the front or the person in back, and typically they're walking single file. I personally would not. I would walk 2, 3, 4 abreast on a trail. And let's just say, for an example, the person in the back end ends up missing. Now, we've heard these with David Pilates all the time, right? They turn up missing, and they become part of the 411, yet a few days later, the person that turned up missing, they find their clothes neatly stacked and folded on a rock several miles from the original disappearance area. Do you buy into that? You think that goes on? You think David Pilates is legitimate when it comes to these things?
Yeah, years ago, whenever I was investigating that, again, a lycanthropy case, we came across, the crew and I came upon clothes in the woods. What was so interesting about these clothes, they were female clothes, and it was a blouse, it was a pair of pants, and it was socks, okay? But what was so strange about it is they were still articulated together. It's as if somebody kind of slithered out of the clothes. Like the blouse was still inside the pants, as if they were tucked, you know what I mean? It looked like somebody was grabbed from the top and pulled out of their clothing, and the clothing just kind of laid where the person had been wearing it. That's the first and only time that I've ever discovered anything like that. It was very, very unsettling. There were people, that I told the story to, and they said, obviously somebody out there was, out there, making out and stuff like that. But it was nothing like this whatsoever. It was along a very well-walked trail. And it was just somebody's garments that were just there. Now, I never heard of a missing persons report in that area or anything like that. But I know, at least in my case, finding things like that is not, something that nobody ever comes across.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I can agree. KRISTA, we're gonna probably wrap it up in a few minutes. I'm just gonna go over quick questions for Ron, if you don't mind, Ron.
No.
You start some. Okay.
Mhm.
I guess I'll do a couple. Yeah. Grandizer 12 asks, wonder if Ronald Murphy can discuss the dog-headed people that we can see in medieval art.
Yeah, so the cenocephali, the dog-headed people, right? And they appear on maps. Usually, they're in places like Libya or India. They're definitely exotic, and you keep on seeing these creep up again and again. Not only that, but you'll find some images of saints, particularly Saint Christopher, who also bears the image of being a dog-headed person as well, too. So the idea that there were people out there that resembled upright walking dogs is millennial, going back probably at least 2,000 years, if not more. So what is going on? So in my book that I wrote called On Dogman, Tracking the Werewolf Through History, one of the points that I brought up is the possibility of people witnessing tribes of people that had hyper trichosis, right? People that were growing all this hair, and if you think about it, people would naturally be ostracized, and if that particular genetic formation was in a very isolated community, and 2 or 3 people were being born like this per year, and they were being ostracized from the village, it wouldn't take very long before another village of people with that recessive trait that now has become dominant within that other village, the people would be nothing but hair covered individuals. So there's a part of me that thinks that might be the explanation for what's going on. But then there's another complete part of me as well, too, that these things are so detailed in the way they are presented, is that they do look as if we were talking about werewolves. So what do we do about such a thing? It's either medieval and ancient imagination, or there is something indeed being out there. So as a researcher, I think it's somewhere lies in between those two worlds.
Hey, thanks, Ron. A couple more just to finish up. Ron, have you ran into the trickster, or is there a trickster fae in your opinion?
Right. So whenever I got lost in the woods and something was laughing at me, I do indeed believe that that's what I was running into. Now, whenever we get into the word trickster, that's very, very pertinent of a word. That's important because we often see this in Native American mythology, but it does show up in other mythologies as well, too. Norse mythology, Loki is definitely a trickster deity. So it does show up. But I think that whenever we talk about trickster, at least in the 21st century imagination, we're talking about something that is playing tricks on you. And that's the way I took it. And I think that that's what I encountered.
Okay. And JD Smooth has 2 questions to finish up the audience questions. I'm going to combine it into one. He asks, first, you think the fae changes into cryptids to run people out of the forest? And secondly, how do you know if you enter fae territory?
Good question. So in my book that I also wrote a book on fairies as well too, and a line that I use in there is that if a fairy does indeed take the form of a cryptid, they can become territorial without being confrontational. So basically, you run them out of the area because a person thinks that they're dealing with something that they're not. So I think that is, at least to me, a legitimate thing, and this could be done through either pheromones or infrasound. I do firmly believe that. And I think that whenever you enter the world of the fae, what is so interesting about this is you really don't know that you have immediately entered the world of the fae, because things might seem distorted, but it is so similar to our world that it takes a while before you notice it. One of the hallmarks in the Middle Ages, if you would enter the world of the fae, you often would see, and KRISTA, this goes back to the idea of hauntings, you would often see dead loved ones, because the fairy and the realm of the dead were so intertwined. So that was one of the things. If you would start seeing people from your life that have died in that realm, that's a good indication that you might have entered into their world.
Yeah.
So, Ron, in a couple seconds, I'm going to have you tell us where you can find, where everybody can find you. But first of all, Gary Spike Sr., thanks for gifting the Bigfoot Rob memberships. Thanks to become pirate members. Text again, and 2 shadows for your awesome super chats. I do appreciate that. KRISTA appreciates that. We love your support. This has been a fantastic show, Ron. And no, really, once again, I've learned a lot from you. Before we close it out, why don't you let everybody know where we can find your books, where we can find you on the web, and so on and so forth.
All right, great. So you go to cryptoguru-ron.com. That's my website. You can get my books through there. You can also get my books through Amazon. And if anybody wants to contact me, you can go onto social media, Ronald Murphy Jr. on Facebook or on Instagram as well too, or email me, ronaldlmurphyjr@yahoo.com. So Ronald L. Murphy Jr. at yahoo.com. I would love to talk to you, even if you don't agree with me. That's the best thing. Let's open up a line of communication.
Well, if we all agree to be a boring show anyways, and
right.
Ron, what you need to do for me, send me all your links, because everybody listening, if Ron sends me his links, I'm sure he will, I'll have them posted in this show, so you just click on all Ron's links, because thank you, Mark, for the awesome super chat. Because, I recommend anything that Ron Murphy does, whether it's a podcast, a book, whatever he's got going on other shows, because Ron is a wealth of knowledge. And you know what, KRISTA? I always learn something. And when I said that, I meant that, awesome show.
I do too. I was excited when I seen who the guest was.
Yeah, well, I'm always excited. And I'm also excited because we have another person that probably is going to be on board for our big conference in 2025.
Yeah,
I'm excited, guys. I'm excited.
Thank you for that. I want to thank everybody for coming on in. If you're new here, subscribe to Bigfoot Mission Rob on YouTube, the Blondes and the Booze Paranormal Podcast on YouTube, Texas Front Porch, and of course, shout out to Josh Turner for always sending paratroopers my way.
Yep.
Check him out. Check
I got
us
to
all
tell you
out.
something real quick though about
like.
Yes, for sure. Asking Ron to come to the conference, it's official now because I got it wrote down with the other people we had talked about. His name's wrote down now.
Oh, great.
Well,
I appreciate it.
now, Ronald Murphy Jr., when KRISTA writes it down in pen, it's like Moses getting the commandments from Jesus, or God, I should say.
Nice. I'm looking forward to talking to you guys again, and then sharing wings together in person in a year.
Absolutely.
Oh, absolutely. Well, Ron, we'll work something out for another show, talking about, the dream type, whatever.
We'll definitely have you back on Blondes too.
Yeah, and you'll be on Blondes. And of course, I got to book you on Tex's show because Tex wants you on. And Tex is a podcast. He ain't on social media. Go figure that one out. I don't get it.
I haven't been on a blonde for a while, so I'm looking forward to it.
There you go.
Well, that's an appropriate way to end the show, I think. And,
Too funny.
I'm not offended by that. Neither is the audience. I love your humor. I love you. I love everybody that came on today. I love all the guests, all the audience members. Subscribe, like the show. And until next time, for KRISTA, for Ron, I'm BMR. We're out.
See ya.